Warchant.com. We are here at Doe Campbell Stadium where the new head coach for Florida State, Mike Norvell, if you can see that behind us, was just announced. And quite the stirring rendition there in the press conference. He was really very loud, but it was also very passionate. You can tell he's very excited about the position. So let's just start with you, Corey, and just your impressions of kind of what impression did he make, you think, in his first official Florida State meeting?
I mean, I think it was a good one. He was loud. I also thought he was very, very confident to a point of being cocky, which I'm cool with, man. I like my athletes cocky and I like my coaches cocky. This guy seems to really think that he's going to do a very good job here, which is better than the alternative, right? Like, hey, here goes nothing. We'll see if I can do it. Like, he really does act like he has a plan, and he appreciates being here. The last guy appreciated being here. The last guy just wasn't very good at being here. So he does have a lot of work to do, Mike Norvell does. But I thought, and I'm not going to even use I might write the term win the press conference, but it doesn't matter, man. Willie Taggart kind of won the press conference. A little more monotone than my man Norvell, but you know, it's about winning games and how quickly you can do that. And I thought he said some really interesting things and some positive things about this university.
Some of those interesting things I think he said, and then also going back what David Coburn and John Thrasher, president, mentioned was really, they said organizationally one of the best they've been around as a coach to be able to do that. Really, they talked a lot about him getting into a lot of details, and that's the fact that he's so young and passionate. To me, it's almost the anti-Willie Taggart here. And just some of the details, some things that maybe stuck out that you think are things that might really help this program with him coming and what he brings to the table.
Yeah, I think there's no question that I think organization is something that we identified early on in the Taggart era, which was an area that they struggled sometimes with that staff. And, yeah, you're talking to people around the program that have spent time with Coach Norvell, and then also talking about the people that they talked to at his previous stops, that was one thing that they all really emphasized. And I think organizational skills, to me, that's something you kind of can't. You either have them or you don't. You can't gloss over that. You can read books, you can watch coaching tapes, you can borrow sayings from different people, but you're either organized or you're not. You're on point or you're not. And I definitely think that was one thing. And the passion, you know, talking to President Thrasher, he said that, you know, they talked to a lot of different head coaches, and when they finished talking to Mike Norvell, just that passion rang true to such a high level that they didn't want to interview more people, but they wanted to continue their due diligence because they felt like last time, they acknowledged this, that last time when they hired Willie Taggart in 4 days, that they didn't do enough due diligence. They didn't talk to enough people. And so that's why they wanted to be as thorough as possible.
It's interesting you mentioned the passion. I mean, that obviously came out, and that's something, again, Willie Taggart did not seem to. I mean, he won people over enough. He was gregarious, friendly enough, but he really didn't have that kind of overriding passion. I think that's something that upset the fans when things are going poorly on the field, and you saw a guy in the field that could have been sitting in the stands. It didn't seem any different what's going on there. But in addition to the passion, Corey, what's something, I mean, I know one of the things that jumped out to me was talk about special teams, that they hadn't scored a special teams, a kickoff return for a touchdown in 20 years.
Yeah.
And they had how many, 10 or
11.
something?
They had 11 since he's been there.
I mean, that's insane. I mean, was it that, or there's some other things like a detailed thing that he said, and you said, wow, that's pretty interesting.
I mean, I thought the special team stuff was interesting. You talked about it being the backbone of a team, and it makes sense because it's all about buying in and wanting to be good at it. Everybody wants to be a good wide receiver, but do you want to be a good gunner? And the fact that I think they've been ranked in the top 5 the last 3 years in special teams. Those are hard to measure, but some metrics have them top 3. And right now, I think they're top 2. They're the number 2 team in the country, and the team they're behind, Penn State, just hired his guy last year. So that to me is really the fact that even after he lost his special teams coordinator, they're still number 2 or number 3 in the country in special teams. Means that it's not just one guy that was doing it for him. It's a culture that he instills that makes them good at special teams. And overall, I thought the biggest thing to me, one of the biggest things to me was he talked about, I think he said he's hired 26 coaches in 4 years. Like that turnover.
That's like that's Saban-esque.
It's Saban-esque. So 26 coaches in 4 years, you would think there'd be a dip. Like you're losing so much continuity, and yet they're about to go to the Cotton Bowl. They just won 12 games. So to me, that means it wasn't that he was being propped up by assistant coaches. It's his program, and even no matter who he lost, he replaced them with good people. And the culture was so strong there at Memphis, whatever that means to you, that they're 12-1 and going to play in the Cotton Bowl. To me, that's a good sign that you can lose that many amount of coaches and the team be better than it's ever been.
Yeah, and it jumped out to me, too, that he talked about being coaching around your players' strengths. I think that's something it seemed like Willie Taggart came in and wanted to run this high-octane system when he really didn't have the quarterbacks or maybe the personnel to be able to pull it off very effectively. And the fact that he's able to adjust around his players' talents stood out to me as well. Anything in terms of his coaching approach, Ira, that you think will maybe work better here than maybe what hasn't happened in the last few years?
I think maybe everywhere. Look, I mean, we weren't real impressed by what we saw over the last couple of years. Jimbo Fisher obviously ran his program at a really high level for a while, and then it kind of fell off. But I think that it seems like this guy, I mean, from everything you've seen and heard, seems to be really positive. One thing I did like, and I think it's going to be a sore spot for fans over the next couple of days until they decide what they're going to do, is this idea about the Cotton Bowl. And he's not sure whether or not he wants to coach in the Cotton Bowl or not. He wants to do what's right by Florida State, his new employer, but he also wants to do what's right for his former players. And that, I don't know, man. I know Florida State fans aren't going to want to hear that. They want to know that he's 100% all in with Florida State. But there's something to be said for that. And I think the connection he has with his players, you could see it yesterday on the field when Memphis beat Cincinnati. And you could see the way the guys in that game competed. One thing I liked about that game was, there was a play where a cornerback comes from the other side of the field and ends up running 40 yards down the field and stripping the ball and causing a fumble. It reminded me of the LaMarcus Joyner play back in the day that Corey always talked about. And it just the way they sold out for that team, even though they knew their head coach was probably going to be leaving. Now, I think that says a lot about his relationship with his players, getting them to believe, getting them to buy in. If he can do that, that's something that really, honestly, hasn't been here since the 2013 season.
That's a good point. I think I would almost be thrown off a little bit if he just said goodbye to his players this morning and see you have a nice bowl game. I'm out of here. The fact that he does have loyalty and it means a lot to him. So it's not just phony when you see this stuff with a lot of coaches come out and put this on.
Didn't he also say that at the meeting that they gave, and we weren't there, but that they gave him a standing there were tears and it was really painful, but that he got a standing ovation from the players when he left. Man, if you're a Florida State fan, that has to excite you. Who would? I don't know that Willie ever ended up meeting with the team, but I can promise you it wasn't a standing ovation when he left, and there wasn't one when he left Oregon, or probably one where he left South Florida. And again, I'm not trying to take shots at Willie Taggart, but man, when you have a team that you're breaking their heart in a sense, but they're so happy for you that they give you a standing ovation as you're leaving them to go to a better opportunity. I think that says a lot about how you ingratiated yourself with those players and why they play so hard for you. So they're probably going to win 10 or 11 games next year, don't you think? At least.
Well, speaking of that, I want to bring it down a little bit. There's all this excitement and all this passion. Everything's wonderful, but let's talk realistic expectations. Corey, you and I were talking earlier about kind of really this is great and it sounds good, but going into next year, schedule gets tougher. You're losing your top 3 or 4 players. The offensive line is still the Florida State offensive line, so not a whole lot's going to change there. I mean, Ira, how do you think everybody, the fan base, everyone is going to handle this? Because next year, let's face it, it's going to be a rebuilding year. There's almost no way around it. Now, you could stumble into 7-8 wins, but that seems on the high side.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious to see how he handles it and how he wins over that locker room, because it's not going to be easy. I mean, this is a little bit different situation than probably when he walked into Memphis, his first time as a head coach, where he's replacing a successful coach in Justin Fuente, who went on to bigger and better things, and those kids probably were excited about where things were, and here's a young guy that's real charismatic. This is a different situation. He's inheriting a team that's been through 2 head coaches in 3 years, an entirely new coaching staff, really turned over. It's basically turning over for the 3rd time. The only thing we know for sure about this staff is Odell Higgins. We talked to President Thrasher, and he said that Odell Higgins has been guaranteed a job at Florida State if he wants a job at Florida State for as long as he wants one. Whether or not that's coaching the defensive line or not, we'll have to see. But, it's going to be another transition for these players, and it's going to be a hard group to kind of win over. And I thought one of the things that he said today that I liked as well was that he's not asking these players to trust him. He's asking them to just give him an opportunity to learn to trust him. And I think these next few months are going to be really important. What happens between now and spring football, the offseason conditioning, and then the spring football is really going to determine a lot. And then also he's got to get some players in. I do think I'll be surprised if he doesn't have some success on the recruiting trail early on, because one of the things that, from hearing people that dealt with him as a recruiter before at other schools was he's very organized. He has a very clear message. Kids respond to him. He's a good evaluator of talent. If he can translate that quickly, I don't know that they're going to get in a top 10 class like Willie did, because Willie had the advantage of bringing some of those guys who were committed to Oregon. But I think he's going to have success on the recruiting trail, but he's got to get some transfers in, because as we've talked about and we've written about on the site, this roster has a lot of holes on it that they have to fill pretty quickly.
And I know if you're watching this video, Aslan did one with Michael Langston talking a little bit more details about recruiting. A guy like Sims, what the odds of being able him to stay. So you might want to click whatever the video is next to this to watch that. Corey, any final thoughts on this hire and prospects for the next year or two with
I got my mic.
That's
Gene.
right.
Come on, buddy. I'm all mic'd up.
So good
I'm
until
all
that
mic'd
last
up.
one.
I can do it twice.
Once.
Yeah, no, I think the hire that I think everybody's interested in is who's your defensive coordinator, man. Again, I'm going to harp on it. Fix the defense.
Taking your guy from Georgia, buddy.
Because do it, man. Do whatever you got to do. Get Kirby Smart. Pay him $9 million to just come here and be a DC. You've got to fix this defense. Even at Memphis, they win games. They don't win a lot with defense, and obviously he's not recruiting a ton. He doesn't get to recruit from the same pool that Florida State does. Figure this out, man. Get yourself a top 40 defense, just top 40. And then you can start building things. But the defense has to get better, and obviously the offensive line does too. But that's what I'm most interested in moving forward is who is he going to hire as his DC.
I think his message needs to be that portal is wide open. If you're an offensive lineman, come and walk on through, buddy. You can walk right into Tallahassee.
I mean, they legitimately might get, don't you think? I mean, Florida State hasn't done great in the transfer market ever since we've been here, really, since I've been covering this team. They've got to get 10 or 12 guys, right? You've got to go get some transfers.
Well, the problem is you do have, I believe they count towards your recruits as well, like the 25 scholarship limit per year. So you can't just sign half of your class, 20 guys out of the portal. Plus, there's always questions about why those guys are in the portal.
Don't care.
There's not a lot of Landon Dickersons. So, but if you can get one or two guys here or there, I am curious. One thing, as we stand inside Doak Campbell Stadium, I think one of the things we talked about last week was what's the fan response going to be? What are season ticket sales going to look like? What's the stadium going to look like next season?
Think it'll look like this?
Well, I think a lot of people, were so hopeful about, the different names that were out there, whether it was Bob Stoops or James Franklin or whoever. And, Mike Norvell was not the guy at the top of a lot of people's lists. But I think if you give him a chance and you listen, it seems like he's a guy that I think people would get excited about. I'm curious what you guys think after people watch the video of the press conference and see some more opportunities to hear him speak. Do you think he can win people over before next season?
Well, I think he will because these fans are hungry. They want to win. They want to get excited. They're very easy to win over, especially the product they sell. Promises of he's this passionate, speaking the way he is about all the buzzwords. They want to hear the discipline, the special teams, the toughness, all this stuff. It's what they want to hear, and he's got the personality to get it across. This is where that spring tour, you get really the people who are the foundation, and all the boosters are going to go to the various stops. He's like this with them, and he's personal, shakes their hand. Yeah, I think he can win a lot of people over. Our season ticket sales is going to blow up? No, but the schedule's a little bit better. And so I do think I think he'll do a little bit. It'll be a blip. It may not be a huge gusher, but there'll be a little bit of a blip.
I think people will be excited about what they hear, but you're not going to fill this place up until the stuff on that field gets better. You know what I mean? I mean, they can buy into his passion, and I do. I don't think it's false. I think that's real. But it needs to translate to the football field before there's going to be a real tick up in excitement around this program, I think. And like he said, like Ira said, he's like, I'm not asking people to trust me. I need to build my trust. I need to prove that I'm trustworthy. Trustworthy. And so he knows it's not going to be an easy build, and he knows that fans are probably a little skeptical. So it's got to change on the field, and then I think people will be all in. Because imagine them being good with that guy's personality. You know what I mean? If they win 9 or 10 games in the next 2 years, one of those years, not combined, with his personality, I think you can really build on something.
Well, that's why I think that the landscape is beautiful for this right now, because Miami's going through Miami's about a year behind where Florida State is. That program's going downhill fast with Diaz. And as good as Florida's doing, they do not have a dynamic personality leading the way. So if you're on an equal playing field with Florida, this guy goes in your living room. Yeah. He's going to win over more recruits than Dan Mullen is. So
One last thing I wanted to add. I talked to Glenn Sugiyama, who runs a search firm that handled this search.
Did you congratulate him on his
craziness?
I
did. We talked a little bit about the all the stuff that was going on. I'm going to write about that. I'll have a story at warchant.com about it. But one of the things he said was getting into the market first, and I thought this was interesting, was really important. And we all kind of wondered, well, why did you still have to wait until a week after the regular season to make your hire? He says, and again, he's paid by Florida State, so he's going to pimp Florida State a little bit. But he said, basically, Florida State got their first pick. He felt like they got the first pick in the draft because they were in the market early. They got to talk to a lot of coaches before any other school had even fired their former coaches. And he said a lot of other schools were interested in Mike Norvell. Mike Norvell was really interested in Florida State, and getting out early, that making the fire when they did really helped. And I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, good stuff. Now, we'll have a lot more coverage on warchant.com about the new coaching hire, the assistants. We got a constant running board on Nuggets. We're hearing about who might be the assistant coaches with Mike Norvell. And I think Rivals has not turned off that 50% special yet. And what's the code there, Aslan, for that thing?
FSU New Era?
No, that's not it. Anyway,
Adidas,
there is a 50% off deal. It goes for a couple more days, so get on that if you're not a Warchant subscriber. You get to read all.
Cyber Monday extension.
Yeah, it is the Cyber Monday extension. We just don't. It'll show you on it. Go to the page, you'll get it all. So yeah, all the great stuff. Corey's fine work, Ira's, Aslan's fantastic video work. You get all the recruiting updates from Michael Langston. It's going to be a huge visit weekend coming up. I mean, Jeff Sims and I think Michael said it could be like a dozen official visitors on campus in Mike Norvell's first big recruiting weekend. So that's going to be huge. Get it all on warchant.com. And thanks everybody for tuning in. Do your deuces, Corey.
Got it.
There we go.